So the good news is, before Nintendo did this to us, I was always planning on releasing a video this week. The bad news is that it was going to be a relatively short, mostly humorous video about the amount of times Earth has been destroyed in the Xeno series. So, not only has my workload gotten a lot bigger recently, but you're going to probably have to wait a few more weeks for that, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time talking about the Wave 4 story DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Future Redeemed. And yeah, you saw how ballistic I went over a 90-second trailer that wasn't even entirely about the story DLC last time. This time they gave us a 2-minute and 49-second trailer and a massive info dump on Japanese web pages, so sit back, we're gonna be here for a while. I'm sorry in advance if this video takes so long to make that you've only got a couple days to watch it before the actual game comes out. So, yeah, if you don't have enough time to fully watch this analysis before Future Redeemed releases, I'm sorry, that's on me, I should have worked faster. Do not blame yourselves. This video will contain spoilers for Xenoblade 1, Future Connected, 2, Torna, and 3. Don't need to worry about X this time, but oh god, I already have a lot of things to talk about, so I'm kind of glad in this case. Even though there are probably more sensible ways to go about talking about this stuff, just to keep myself sane, I'm going to go through all of this information in the order I personally read through it the first time. So we're going to start with the trailer, then look at 2 different Japanese pages where other information was posted. If some of this information is out in English at the time you're seeing this video, I started recording this less than 3 hours after the trailer dropped. I'm just going off of what I have at the time, and quite frankly, I'm probably not going to have enough time to go back and re-record segments if English stuff drops during the process of recording or editing this. Oh, and one last thing. This trailer is so good, it completely invalidates the data mine of Wave 4 stuff that people were able to find in Wave 3. There are a few out-of-context cutscene names and new location names that are just new, different, made-up words, but all of the interesting stuff that piqued people's interest has been shown off or is easily extrapolatable from stuff in this trailer and additional information. I thought I might have to talk around the fact that Klaus's name is in a cutscene title, or that Prison Island and Colony 9 are listed as campsite locations. However, all of that is there, and there is so much more stuff that nobody knew about from the data mine in this trailer and other information, so basically, having seen the data mine provides zero advantage or additional knowledge at this point. This trailer is catching people who didn't see it up to that information, and then some. Just as an example, the base party member data, including names, for the 6 members that we see in the trailer was data mined. However, all of their names were romanized Japanese and not their official English names, so A had her name written as EI, which means nobody made the connection between that and Mobius A, so that bit is a completely new revelation. And the character Nicole, the one who looks like a younger Shulk and is most likely founder Ortiz, was written as Nicole, to the point where I literally told a friend named Nicole, hey, there might be a Xenoblade character named after you, but nope, completely different character, completely different gender than people who had seen the data mine were thinking. So it's more a hindrance than anything at this point. Anyway, we open on more footage of a scene that we have seen flashbacks to before in the main game. Mobius N's assault on the original city. As we see the main character from the previous trailer, whose name has now been officially revealed to be Matthew, wading through the destruction. He calls out 2 names. The second one is Granddad. He's just talking about his grandfather, who we already knew had been killed from the previous trailer, and we see this very shortly. But the first name he calls out might be slightly confusing to you. It sounds like he's saying Niall, or Nail, but this is not the name of the character. It is Nael, and is slightly distorted because of his accent. Matthew is a name of biblical significance, just like Noah, and El is a Hebrew name for God. So, yeah, Xeno protags, biblical names, it makes a whole lot of sense. Nael is Matthew's younger sister, and we'll see later that her appearance matches the Founder Doyle statue, just as Matthew does Founder Van Damme. We see N stabbing a guy, and there's more blood than we've seen in most of Xenoblade 3, so that's kind of a big deal. But more gruesomely, just when the camera starts to pan around behind Matthew and before it zooms in on that, we see a group of city NPCs seemingly locked in place, just standing there on fire. That's nuts, and I'm kind of surprised they got away with that in a T-rated game in current year. Like, stuff on that level of horrificness is the kind of stuff Xenogears does frequently enough where I like to say that it would probably be rated M if it came out today. And they're just throwing it out there, so yeah. We see N stab an old man in the stomach with his lucky 7, something we knew he had at this time from a flashback, and the dying man calls out Matthew's name. This is his grandfather, who we already knew got killed. The interesting thing about this is, he shows up on a Japanese relationship chart. Now, most of this information is redundant, so I'm not going to be talking about it directly a lot, but the important thing is, this man's name is written in katakana here on this relationship chart, and in English in a cutscene name from the data mine, the exact same as Gondor, the hero from the base game. So now we know why Gondor doesn't like her name, as she was named after a male ancestor. Throughout this, it also cuts to a photo of the Noah and Mio who would later go on to become N and M with the child they had, heavily indicating this old Gondor is that child. Which would then mean that my theory was slightly wrong, and Matthew and Niall are in fact N and M's great-grandchildren and not their grandchildren. This would also make the two of them the great-great-grandchildren of Rex and Nia, which is a very interesting family connection as we see a different Rex relative and Rex himself later on. Before he explodes in a flash of light, Old Man Gondor says, "Take care of Niall, the future. It's in your hands now, Matthew." We can also see something outright confirming the fact that the founders were not the original Ouroboros, as Gondor has a Kavesi Ouroboros iris, which is especially interesting because we've seen Matthew's iris before, and he has an Agnian one, even being on the Agnian side of the Hall of Founders. So it seems like when you have a family that's an intermingling of Agnian and Kavesi, the iris is semi-random when it gets passed down to descendants, and we have reason to believe that Niall's iris is a Kavesi one, because she's on the Kavesi side of the Hall of Founders, and appears to have been Matthew's interlink partner. We also see, very, very briefly, a shot of the group of people that appears to be on fire, and there is a character in front of them who looks a lot like the Doyle founder statue. We'll see her a lot clearer later, but yes, this is Niall. It's worth mentioning, these people might not actually be on fire, as in her official art, Niall appears to be able to generate some sort of weird dimensionally portal-y things out of her hands, so it's possible that she is teleporting these people to safety while Gondor holds off N and Matthew tries to save him. We get a big wide shot of the big explosion, and while yes, this place has the same aesthetic as the final game's second city, the geometry is completely different, so this first city is not just going to be a carbon copy of it, though I'm guessing since this is probably the inciting incident on Matthew's journey, this is going to happen fairly early on, and we're not likely to be able to actually explore the city, only seeing it in cutscenes and in ruins. Both N and Matthew are also shown resisting and reacting to the blast before getting blown away, and music kicks in as we're given headshots of all 6 main characters. This song appears to be Future Redeem's main battle theme, and has been uploaded on Nintendo of Japan's YouTube channel as New Battle! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Please check it out. It's a Xenoblade battle theme, so it's of course fantastic. We then see headshots of all 6 main characters, and a big title drop. For ease of communication, I'll mention everyone's names now. In order, it's Matthew, A, Glimmer, or Kagiroy in Japanese, Nicole, and then of course, the returning characters, Shulk and Rex. Matthew is in a fairly nondescript looking area with a tree. This is most likely in the vague Ragwell Lake area, as we know that's going to be a big part of the new region for this expansion. A is shown in another fairly nondescript location with a rock wall in the background. The plants are redder, suggesting it could be in the Goraflava area from the main game. This could also very easily be a different part of Ragwell Lake. There's basically nothing that can be gleaned about Glimmer and Nicole's introductions, although it seems like they are in combat in these scenes. However, they appear to be shots from a cutscene we see a lot more of later on, so that's not really a big loss. Shulk appears to be in Colony 9, and by that I mean the Colony 9 from Xenoblade 1, which we'll see in a lot more detail later on. And Rex appears to either be in the same battle scene Glimmer and Nicole are in, or by a rock wall on one of the ends of Ragwell Bridge. Rex is now shown missing his left eye, matching both the eye Zeke wore his eye patch over and the founder statue from the main game, and we will later see that Shulk is also down a right arm using a robotic prosthetic, so The playable versions of these characters are going to match the founder statues and have suffered severe injuries. We then get our title drop, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. This and the gold subtitle lettering is obviously a reference to Xenoblade 1's Future Connected expansion, which dropped with Xenoblade Definitive Edition, but the logo itself is actually tying all 3 games together. Each Xenoblade logo did something different to the letters to properly reflect the themes and events that happen in the game. The Xenoblade 3 part of this logo is identical to the base game, so the letters in Xenoblade Chronicles are fading away into motes of light, like an off-seeing, and there's a term marker in the number 3, and Future Redeemed has its letters rendered in a very ink-brushy style matching the Monado art symbols, while Redeemed is on fire, like Pyra's fire, which was represented in Xenoblade 2's logo. The gold color is also consistent across all 3 Xenoblade expansion stories, as Torna the Golden Country subtitle used letters cut out of a gold thing, and Future Connected and Future Redeemed both just use gold lettering. I don't know what the Redeemed and Future Redeemed means quite yet, but with Alvis potentially being in an antagonistic role for at least part of this, it could be something about properly saving the future and holding on to it after Mobius was created and put things in jeopardy. The party is standing in what appears to be a big lightning storm on top of a snowy mountain, which suggests that there will be importance placed on a snow area at some point in this story, which makes sense because there was barely any snow in the base game. Behind Matthew, we can also see Prison Island from Xenoblade 1, a very important location that also will show up later in this trailer. Above Shulk and Rex, however, we see some ruins. This appears to be from Tantal, so if there is going to be a big new snowy area, it looks like it's going to be a mix of possibly some more Valak Mountain stuff maybe, and the Kingdom of Tantal leading up to Prison Island. Behind the logo on the left side, we can see what looks like even darker storm clouds, so this is either just for the aesthetic purpose to make the logo pop out more, or this indicates that we will be seeing the origin of the big storm protecting Origin. I didn't mean to say Origin twice there in that sentence, I'm sorry. We're then thrown into an altercation between Glimmer and Nikal. And yes, it is very worth pointing out that Glimmer is virtually identical to the statue of House Rhodes' founder, while Nikal is virtually identical to the statue of House Ortiz. From that, we can also extrapolate that Glimmer is an Agnian soldier, while Nikal is Kavesi, and Glimmer remarks that his weapon cannot possibly be a blade, which is something we already knew about, as the Rhodes statue outright stated that he chose instead to fight with a weapon of his own creation. And when we get to his official art, there will actually be a lot to talk about that weapon. Then, as befitting an ancestor of Guernica, Matthew comes in saying, "Alright, break it up. If you want to scrap with me," before punching the ground. Bizarrely, this punch releases the same green energy the Ouroboros stone does, and we'll see something very weird similar to that in a later cutscene, so I personally think, and it's backed up by a few things, that Matthew's fists are not just a regular blade weapon, they also function as an Ouroboros stone somehow. We then see a Mobius get stabbed through the core from behind by a katana-looking sword, and A says, "I don't normally stoop to this, such duplicity is beneath me," suggesting she has either a very high view of herself or some sort of honor code. We also see that, yeah, she is basically a female Alvis in design, although, bizarrely enough, she does not have the Ontos core crystal on her chest like he did, both in scenes in this trailer and the previous one, and in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, but instead worn as an earring. This is not particularly out of the ordinary, as we see core crystals in a lot more unusual places than just the chest in Xenoblade 3 compared to only Jin having it on his head in Xenoblade 2, but the fact that it's an Aegis core makes this a bit more weird. We can also in fact see in the wide shot that her outfit is basically a Mobius one, so yes, to at least some degree, Console A is this character. We can also see that the sword she's holding has a red handle with a blue-white light blade and some sort of symbol in the ring on it. Later information will in fact prove that this is a new form of the original Ontos Monado that Shulk used throughout Xenoblade 1. We then have a group of what looks a lot like Lost Number soldiers with the leader, a new character design, pointing a lance at Glimmer, saying the Clockless. This is supremely interesting for two reasons. The first is this woman looks a lot like a younger Sharla, so she could potentially either be Sharla reborn into the cycle and then liberated by the Lost Numbers, becoming one of their members, or just another descendant of her and Ryan. I know we all thought Ashira was one, but she could be one as well, or Ashira could actually be Dunban's kid, which doesn't really fit her appearance, but whatever. And then secondly, the term Clockless. She's saying this referring to Glimmer, who, as we can see in an up-close shot, already has her Agni and Ouroboros iris, which heavily suggests that the name Ouroboros itself does not yet exist in universe. This is bizarre because Old Man Gondor does have an Ouroboros iris, so it's not like Matthew is the first character to ever get one, so it's like I said, the power exists to some degree already. However, these people, the founders, are going to be the first ones to actually interlink. But before Ouroboros itself is created and that full power is realized, the Lost Numbers, or at least this separate faction, who we'll learn a little bit more about later, will refer to Agnian and Kevesi soldiers who have been freed as Clockless, as they are no longer bound to their colony's flame clock. We then hear, "What do you want to do, Shulk?" As we finally see another headshot of Shulk. I mean, we already got one earlier, but in this case, we can more clearly see that his hair is way, way longer. Bizarrely, in the flashback scene with him and Rex facing down Alvis, we can see that his hair is just slightly longer than it was in Xenoblade 1. So it looks like after he lost his arm, he also grew his hair out to even better match Dunban, which is kind of adorable. Behind him, we can see some people with similar looking outfits to the ones the characters in the Glimmer scene were wearing, and even what appears to be the tip of the Sharla lookalike woman's lance, as well as a Gormati behind Shulk's left shoulder. So it looks like whatever this force is, it's made of people from multiple races, and unlike the second city where the bloodlines have been diluted so much everyone just appears human, all the different races at least retain some of their unique characteristics, although I'm not sure if we see a single Machina or Hyentia throughout all of this. We then see Nikal running as he shouts "careful" to try and shield Glimmer from something. In the background behind him running, we can see Matthew and some structure with what looks like Mobius energy coming out of it. Instead of taking the attack himself, though, he is then shielded by the Gigaist of Chads, Rex himself. And while it does seem like he has unfortunately been recast, though he does retain his original Japanese voice, he is introduced immediately by spouting two memes and recreating an iconic pose from his original game. He says, "I like your attitude, kiddo, and then I'll show them a thing or three," and then makes the exact same motion as he does when he first obtains both Pyra and Numa's swords in Xenoblade 2. If you notice, you could see that he is not only carrying only one sword here, but that it's a different design than the two we see him holding in several other scenes in this trailer and in the previous one. It looks like this is his version of the Numa sword, formed by combining the faux Pyra and faux Mithra ones he has, as it's glowing a very Numa-looking green, and appears to use design elements from both of those, and also neither of the other swords is on him. We then see what everyone was fighting, as a Pharaonis from each nation faces down the party. And Rex is not in this shot, but the spear woman from before is, so she is fairly likely to die, unfortunately. It looks to me that this is an extension of the altercation between Glimmer and Nikal, as they went from fighting against each other to Nikal trying to protect her from an attack from one of these Pharaonises. So it's probably these two's colonies here, and we can even see a Mobius standing atop the Agnian one. This Mobius talks, and I'm gonna be real, his voice is so distorted I can barely hear what he's saying, but I think he says, "I'll put two Pharaonises together to double my power. How's that for a pointed breakthrough?" And yeah, he is in fact sticking the two Pharaonises together, and then fires head lasers from both of them. This is not the same Mobius that we see A stab earlier in the trailer, but I'm guessing that this one is fought later than that, and A's entire big deal, introducing herself and becoming trusted by Matthew in the first place, is by killing a Mobius that was giving him trouble. We then have gameplay, and I am going to gloss over a couple things here, just because they are explicitly explained in other material. What's definitely worth pointing out is the character order, because this is going to be the order you're switching through everyone. It goes Matthew, A, Nikal, Glimmer, Shulk, and Rex. This is actually kind of interesting, because Matthew is Agnian. We obviously know Shulk and Rex are going to be Kevesi and Agnian respectively, and then Nikal and Glimmer are obviously going to be Kevesi and Agnian respectively, which means to keep things balanced, A is going to be Kevesi, and yet we go Matthew A instead of A Matthew, meaning the characters are in the order of Agnian, Kevesi, Kevesi, Agnian, Kevesi, Agnian. This was obviously done to put Matthew, the Agnian controlling main character, on top, but I think it's kind of interesting they did not want to go Agnian Kevesi down the entire way, but I guess they wanted to keep the Xenoblade 1 and 2 characters in 1 and 2 order outside of that. Also, this is of course assuming that you can't switch weapon types out on characters in Future Redeemed, but since you couldn't in Torna as well, I think it's pretty likely you won't be able to here. And that's backed up by the fact that if you look at Matthew's arts, he has very punchy looking arts on both sides, and in fact, a Detonating Hit and Raging Force are just outright arts Gondor has access to, or the martial artist class does, which makes sense because he is Gondor's ancestor. And then on the right side, he also has Backspin Punch, Mighty Strike, and Revolt Uppercut, which, well, I mean, those all sound like other martial arts maneuvers, so it seems like characters will get full arts palettes based on one class here. We are skipping Monado Crash for now, and the chain attack meter is still there, so that's interesting. Matthew is an attacker. He's the only one who really uses a class directly ripped from the base game, and Martial Artist is an attacker, so that makes sense. A, despite wielding a Monado, is a healer, which is really out there. Nikal is a defender, which makes sense based on some other things we'll see later. Glimmer is a healer. Her preferred weapon is a staff that sort of looks like Fiona's weapon, so yeah, of course she is. And then very interestingly, out of the two protagonists, they chose to turn Shulk into a defender and keep Rex as an attacker. This is only weird because Rex is the one shown blocking an attack earlier in the trailer, but given the fact that when you used Shulk as a blade in Xenoblade 2, despite being a DPS class, his weapon reused shield hammer animations, so it makes more sense for him to be a tank, I think. We appear to be in a new area. This looks like the region around the original Xenoblade 1 Colony 9, which we'll see a lot more of later on, so this makes sense. And the most surprising part of all of this is, I think Origin is still visible there in the sky on the right between the two hills, unless that's something different that just sort of looks like it. So it looks like in this time period, we will have both sides of the big conflict between Mobius and the Lost Numbers being a lot more overt and out in the open if both Origin and the original city are not hidden away. And then later on, the second city has to be formed in secret because Mobius gains so much more power, and Origin is also able to be successfully hidden away behind a difficult to pass through storm. The next clip shows the party at a substantially lower level, this time fighting some Kevesi forces outside of what appears to be some sort of town. This doesn't look like Colony 9, so this could be another settlement built within Ionios. We only see battle gameplay with the full party throughout this entire trailer and all the supplemental material, and I believe the lowest we see anything go is level 30. So my guess is that we will start out with Matthew in the upper 20s and go somewhere vaguely between 30 and 60 or 70. I don't know why they're not starting at level 1 in this case, but I guess since we're going to have Shulk and Rex in the party, it makes more sense to start at a relatively higher level because of how experienced they are. And I'm also guessing that beyond mechanics that have been altered for the DLC, you're going to start out with what a base game character would have access to at, say, level 25 or level 30 in terms of amount of arts and non-class related customization options. The player is controlling A here, and we can get a glimpse of a bunch of her arts, including her talent art, Vision. Remember, this is a post-Xenoblade 1 Shulk. He doesn't have access to visions. A appears to be using a version of the original Ontos Monado, so she gets them instead. It'll probably work like Mithra's talent art in Torna though. She also has Skyfoil, which inflicts attack down, Sword Mirage, which is an AoE that increases evasion, Shaker Edge, one of Shulk's original arts, which inflicts topple, Cross Ray, which is a heal, and Light Field, which is a regen field. That's not the most interesting thing though, as if you remember from the first trailer, there is a shot of Matthew summoning what looked like an Ouroboros as more of a stand than an interlink thing, and we can actually see two of these in this shot. On the left side, partially hidden by the party list, we can see Matthew summon his for an attack, and on the right, just above the right side of A's arts palette, we can see one that was summoned by what appears to be Nikal. This means that the common fan prediction was in fact correct. all of these characters will be able to tap into it somewhat as like a stand type thing, and will most likely eventually learn how to interlink later. Nikal and Glimmer are the only interlink pair present in this party, as we don't see the founders of Cassini and Reed at all, though I guess the Charla-looking woman with the spear could potentially be Reed, as she seems to be close to Shulk. And part of Matthew's motivation in this story is to find Nael, who we already know is going to be his interlink partner. So yeah, I guess that does kind of spoil that she survives to some degree and becomes the founder of House Doyle, but in practice, this means that interlinking might be a playable thing, but it will be a playable thing much later on in the game, and we might only get to see the Matthew Nile and Nikal Glimmer interlinks because we have no real indication who Cassini and Reed even are. There are also a couple new icons, as we see above most of the enemies' level tags. There's a green hexagon with a check mark in it. This might have to do with the bestiary or collectopedia supplemental systems that we'll talk about way later on, so that's my real guess. And then there's also a red icon of a flag and a sword crossed together next to a tree and below the Auxilia HP bar for some reason. I don't know what that means. Only thing I can think of is that this is the future redeemed equivalent of skirmishes from base 3. The next shot has the player controlling Rex, and this is the one where everyone's level 30, except Matthew's level 31 for some reason. And looking at Rex's arts, we could very, very sadly see that despite using 2 swords, he has not upgraded to quadruple spinning edge, sticking with double. Crossblaze and Dual Blast are brand new arts, but he does also retain Anchor Shot, which has now gained a positional, meaning it's a bit less powerful and you do actually need to get into place. His talent art is Infinity Blade, which in addition to being Noah's first Lucky 7 talent art, was also the super secret epic hidden level 4 special that he had with Numa in base Xenoblade 2, so it's probably the thing that he does when he combines the fake Pyra and Mithra swords together. He makes a fake Numa sword, and then is able to use a version of that attack. This again appears to be taking place in the Colony 9 outskirts. What does not is this new snow area shot, where the party is now in the level 40s, and appears to be fighting a bird with a very, very familiar looking corruption on it. It's using an art called Fog Cannon, and has another new icon, this one a set of gnashing pointy teeth to the left of its HP bar. I don't know what this icon means, but it does not on its own denote a fog beast. We'll see more of them later. I'm thinking it's some sort of like hunt target that's not necessarily a unique monster maybe. We also get a look at Shulk's new tank loadout. Stream Edge has lost its AoE, while Slit Edge has lost its positional and gained one, so it's way more powerful. And Shulk has also gained Heavy Rush as a regular art, and a new lock-on art, Monado Rage, adding yet another art to the Monado art pile, despite the fact that he's not even using a real Monado anymore. His talent art is, of course, still Monado Buster. Next up is Nikal and Glimmer using some sort of combo attack where he shoots some stuff and she turns her staff into like an airhoo or something similar and fires some fire projectiles, an ability known as Hellstream. This time they're fighting some Agni and Levnesses, and we can also see a Blant in the background. In a couple frames of this, we can see that the Levnesses have different light colors and more red designs, suggesting that they might either be under direct Mobius control or a previous iteration of the technology, and also another hexagon marker above the level tag that appears to have some sort of different symbol in it than the green checkmark. It's orange and doesn't look like an X. It might be something else that we might see clearer later in the trailer. I don't actually remember. Very, very briefly, when the regular UI fades in, we can also see Nikal's arts. Hellstream is in fact the ability mapped to where the interlink button would be, and while we'll get more details about this later, it functions somewhat similar to the launch charge from the Gauntlet in the last wave of DLC. As for his arts, on D-pad up, Nikal has Blitz Punch, which is a high aggro ability, and then on X he has Motor Lifter, a launch. On Y he has Whirlwind, which is an AoE with high aggro. On B, Steady Assault, which is reduce mid-art damage, so it's basically mitigation during the animation of this art. And his talent art is Total Destruction, which is similar, but is also an AoE ability with Pierce. Now back to story as a new vocal song plays. I'm not going to even attempt to discern the lyrics in any of this. It's going to be very important, but I think we need to hear it in context in order to get everything out of this. And we see Niall moping around in a house as she speaks. Interestingly, her accent appears to be English despite being a cat girl. This is most likely because she's not completely Gormati, or the version of Gormati Nia was. She's a descendant of N and M, and some of her other ancestors further down the line were probably also not Gormati, so she doesn't have a more pure Gormati accent like Mio, who is half Nia, has. She says, with or without Mobius, in the end, people always kill people. This pretty heavily contradicts with the little bio we get of her that describes her personality. So my guess is, at some point early on in the game, something horrific is going to happen that's going to scar her and massively change her outlook, and then Mobius attacks the city, because obviously she wouldn't be saying this just in response to a Mobius attack. She'd have to be exposed to the darkness of regular humans at some point as well. We see her hugging a kid who's dissolving into light motes, and we'll find out later that she's very close and well liked by children of the city. So obviously someone she cared about died, and in order for that line to make sense, they must have been killed by something other than Mobius, Kavesi, or Agnian. So it's likely that there is another faction of just regular people who are going around doing awful things that won't exist anymore by the time of the main game, because Mobius has clamped down so hard on anyone not from one of the nations. It seems like this has to happen before Anne attacks the city, because after that, Niall goes missing and Matthew has to find her. So unless they're hiding an entire second bit of campaign where you play as her and a bunch of bad things happen and she changes her outlook completely, there's got to be a fairly extensive intro where you're just playing as Matthew and Niall, who might not even be fully playable or just function as a hero, where some stuff happens, then Anne attacks the city, and then Matthew meets Shulk and Rex, and stuff goes on from there. The last bit of her with very dead-looking eyes and a red light probably comes from a different scene than both the one of her talking with Matthew in the empty house, and the one of her cradling the dying kid, because of something later. While I'm not going to discuss the words themselves, we've heard enough lyrics from the song at this point, where I want to talk about one small fan theory. The singer very much appears to not be Sarah Ueda, who sang A Step Away and Where We Belong from base game Xenoblade 3, but some people are theorizing that it's actually Joanne Hogg, the singer behind the vocal tracks of Xenogears and Xenosaga Episode 1. The vocal style and just everything about it does sound a lot like her, but it's been like 20 years since she's done anything Xeno, so I don't even know if she's still professionally working, let alone willing to come back and do something with Mitsuda again, but it's very worth pointing out this would be another neat way the Xeno series could come full circle. What's even more worth pointing out is the first shot we've ever seen of the complete Trinity processor with all 3 cores. Again, outright showing that the Onto/Usia core is red like Alvis's core crystal. This trailer not being out is why they didn't really show any physical details of what the box for the big Xenoblade Trilogy OST collection looks like, because it's called the Trinity Collection, and yeah, the design of the box is the complete Trinity processor, so they were waiting for this trailer to drop to hit us with how the thing actually looks, and now that I've seen it, I think I might need to actually drop the money on it. Please subscribe and watch all my other videos so I can afford to do that. We then hear Shulk say, I heard about that from Melia. A gift from Alvis, she called it. We do not know when this line happens. It could very easily be a pre-origin thing in general and part of a flashback, or something Shulk says talking to like A or Rex or some other returning character who happens to know Melia. The fact that he says a gift from Alvis and we only see A as an Ontos core haver in an explicitly non-antagonistic role means that this could be a sarcastic thing. When she says a gift from Alvis, it could not be a good thing. But I don't really know, considering that the line is only said over a flashback, obviously, to the Trinity processor in Radamanthus. This could really be applied to anything because there's no present day context for it. This is literally just Shulk talking over a flashback shot of something that we knew happened in the past but we never saw directly. We then see the party walking up to a decrepit but familiar and welcoming old location. As I think Matthew asks, is this it? And Shulk responds, yes, the Liberator's base of operations. It's a decrepit, but still standing and still resisting New Colony 9, as seen in the end of Xenoblade 1. The full party is together here, which means this takes place well after N sacks the city, And yet all of the human NPCs here wear very Lost Numbers looking clothes and stuff. So my guess would be that you can connect with NPCs from Colony 9 here, and it's implied that these guys are the ones that go and found the second city alongside the actual founders. So if Reed and Cassini exist, they're probably seen as NPCs around here as well. Then we get a scene that I just can't even begin to comprehend, as Zed says, "Is this how badly you want to erase us? My god?" And yeah, this is an extended look at the whole scene of Shulk and Rex facing down Alvis from the other trailer, except Zed is floating next to them, suggesting that the leader of Mobius is somehow on their side against the encroaching Ontos, which, how? So, like, either something from the higher dimension Alvis left off to screwed him up real bad and he came back, or because Zed is the representation of humanity and its base desires and stuff, they viewed, like, the Monado and Aegises as divine things, which caused Zed to come into existence treating Ontos as a god, and because of that, Alvis came back and like, "Hey, you wanted no gods, and then immediately started worshipping me? Maybe you should stop existing now," or something like that. The line could be taken out of context and from a different scene, but like, there's still Alvis in an antagonistic spot, and Zed in a protagonistic spot, alongside Shulk and Rex. So honestly, while he still has his original appearance, like the one from the base game where he looks like a villain, he could potentially have come into existence initially as not a bad thing, and then been changed or corrupted at some point to only reflect the negative aspects and desires of humanity, at which point he took over Origin and made Ionios and all of that. Which I think would make a lot of sense, because it's kind of a big theme in all of the Xenoblade games that, believe it or not, naive wide-eyed idealism and believing in the inherent goodness of humanity is not cringe and actually a good thing sometimes. So the fact that the representation of humanity's collective unconscious started off like that, but then somehow got screwed up and is only a bad thing, leaving the children of the previous generation of heroes and just some other people, because I think Lanz is just kind of a guy, and I think even Noah is just kind of a guy, to instead inherit that will and be the positive representations of looking towards the future, and then break out of the cycle of Ionios by destroying Zed and letting all of humanity choose independently instead of as one monolithic entity. It's also possible that they're able to free Alvis of his corruption, but at the cost of him having to basically go through a Doctor Who regeneration into A and lose a lot of power, but then said corruption was able to take over Zed and by extension Origin, and that's how Shulk and Rex got hurt and Ionios came to be. We also don't really know when this Alvis scene takes place. My guess it would be early on, but it could theoretically be after everything and Zed just kind of gets reconstituted, or this could be a completely metaphorical scene to begin with. But if the entire thing is that A, existing is sort of a gift from Alvis, allowing Ontos to be a thing again, or still after he's gone or screwed up, then that honestly really plays into my theory that one of Pyra and Mithra retained the Pneuma powers and the other one got the Logos powers, because if you then have A there, that's all three pieces of the Trinity processor, which is probably exactly the thing you need to fix all of this stuff, and maybe even unite the 1 and 2 worlds properly after the end of Ionios. There's also the fact that, yeah, I don't know why I've been hiding it, Glimmer is very obviously Rex's kid with Pyra, like how Mio is his with Nia, so she has a complete looking Pneuma core crystal. Her and A, if those core crystals function the same way Alvis's and Pneuma's did, you only need a reborn Malos. I don't know where you're going to get one of those, but find one of those and there's your complete Trinity processor without any of the original people. Also, the fact that they got Harry Lloyd back for the DLC, kinda nuts. I have no idea how much money Nintendo's giving them, but hopefully they get even more to make their next game. We then get some money shots from what's going to be a big climactic, if not the final battle, as the party members take on N at Prison Island. Which, yeah, we saw it earlier in the big piece of key art, but it's clearly going to be a very important location. He's using his Lucky 7 out of the sheath again, like he did when he killed Old Man Gondor, and is able to hold off both Matthew and A. And then we get fun father-daughter bonding moments as, first off, some of the big lights that form like the big shield around Prison Island fire off, so maybe they activate that shield in order to keep other Mobius from reinforcing N as they try to defeat him. And yeah, you can even see Glimmer charging up her staff, which might be able to activate that stuff the same way Saurian could with the big Hyentia staff. I don't know, Shulk was there, he could explain something about that. But speaking of Glimmer, we then get fun father-daughter bonding moments as Rex and his daughter do a tag team attack on Rex's son-in-law, who's with one of his other daughters, which is just hilarious. Funny things like that are why I continue to not have any real problem with the epic Rex family tree. Speaking again of Glimmer, we see her talking to Rex and saying, "But now I'm glad I'm here. Glad to choose for myself." And yes, checking the Japanese page, she has the same voice actress as Pyra and Mithra, and this sounds like Sky Bennett returning. So even if Al Weaver is not back as Rex, we still have a protagonist from both Xenoblade 1 and 2 voiced by their original VA. Next we see Nikal talking to Shulk saying, "Honestly, just knowing who I'm meant to be fighting, that's the biggest thing of all." And yeah, Nikal is most likely Shulk's son with Fiora. I thought Chris could still be possible, they could be brothers, maybe even twins, I don't know, but he's a mechanically inclined Homs boy who looks a lot like Shulk, has the same hair color, has similar eyes to Fiora in some interpretations of her, is probably their kid. Obviously, both he and Glimmer are reincarnated through the Flame Clock system, so they won't have memories of Shulk and Rex actually being their dads, but it's somewhat similar to the relationship Nia and Mio have in Base 3, or potentially even the one Nia and M have that we don't really see a lot of. It's stuff like that. They're probably still going to have interactions and inexplicably be drawn to each other and be close, because obviously we know Shulk and Rex would be good fathers, so any remaining memories in the back of their mind would obviously be positive ones. Nikal does not have Shulk's Japanese VA, and he does not appear to be voiced by Adam Howden here. More importantly though, there's a scene where he's working on Shulk's prosthetic arm, and that's adorable, but Riku is just there! This takes place 10,000 years before the main game, by the way. Riku, he's just there. Honestly, the fact that regular Alvis and girl Alvis are both in this trailer makes Riku also being Alvis more likely to me than less for some reason. I think he might just be like some kind of super special Nappan sage in training or something like that. And I think it's pretty clear that Nikal, Shulk, or both of them are Riku's mysterious master pawn. My guess would be Nikal because his weapon type is clearly two big robot arms that are based on Nappan wings, so he likely has some connection to Nappan in general. There's another clip of the Prison Island N fight where Nikal and Shulk are fighting together. Makes sense, they're probably father and son, and they're both tanks. We then get an A scene. My guess would be this is her giving exposition on the old world, something Shulk and Rex should know about, but this might be her explaining this to the other three party members, or potentially even giving additional context that Alvis as Ontos might have had access to, but Pyra and Mithra would have lost. It is incredibly out of focus, but in the first shot where we can just see A's head, there is a building in the background, and to me, this looks like a repaired version of the church from Elysium. So it's possible she draws everyone into like an actual recreated memory that shows the Elysium space station in its prime. Despite that though, all of the other flashback stuff does appear to be reused from 2. Either way, A says, despite having built the perfect world for themselves, humans yet desired the beyond. So somehow, despite everything that's happening here, there's going to need to be some sort of context of the original Earth prior to the original Klaus experiment, not even the Origin experiment, that most likely will come into explaining maybe Zed's outlook towards viewing Alvis as a god, or Alvis's actions and something about the hubris of humanity, or something like that, that A will know about and have to explain to even Shulk and Rex, because keep in mind, this is probably a story Shulk and Rex don't even know in its entirety, because otherwise, wouldn't they be the ones saying it? I don't know, it just seems to me like we're going to get even more old Earth lore than we had before, and it's not just going to be A giving an exposition dump. Oh, also, I'm almost certain based on this line that A's English VA is Medion's VA, so I am so happy right now. No Hyentia party member, but we almost have a burp here. Our last scene is Niall saying, "Matthew, always in Fantasyland," as she turns to face him glowing with power in a different outfit. This one looking a whole lot like a combination of a Mobius outfit and Numa's outfit. and she has the Ontos core crystal for some reason. So somehow she becomes the holder of the Ontos core. So does the one A not have the full power? Is it a fake? A seems to actually be an extension of Alvis, or Alvis's original personality. So maybe he got split in two as well, and the other half worked with Mobius and corrupted Nael? Or does A sacrifice herself at some point after the fight with N, and do the resurrection thing that Alvis and Pyra did to bring Nael back to life, because maybe she died, but then at some point she gets Mobius, and it's not the character named A, but Nael herself who becomes Mobius A. Except that can't be true, because we know Nael has to become Doyle. So somehow she has to be freed from this, and I don't really know where any of this is going, and I am so excited to see more. I'm sure you are too, because there's probably like a day before the game comes out when you're seeing this video. Oh, you thought I was done. I wouldn't be Luxon if I stopped just at that. Come on, we got a bunch of Twitter videos to go through, we've got a Japanese blog post, and an entire Japanese website. There is no escape. This video is the endless now. Screw Mobius. I don't even need superpowers. I just need my big mouth. Similar to the ongoing developer blog series that came out pre-release of Xenoblade 3 and got a couple updates for the other DLC waves, we got a new Japanese blog post, but this one's more of a general Xenoblade thing, because it also talks Amiibos and OSTs, and despite that being at the end of the page, I'm going to go over that first very quickly. The Pyra Mithra double set releases on Friday, July 21st in Japan, and in Xenoblade 3, using those Amiibos will allow you to reskin Noah's sword into Pyra and Mithra's swords. Ironically, these appear to be the original models of those swords, and not the replicas Rex uses, so Noah gets the real ones. Rex has to settle with replicas for some reason. It also says that, like with the original Minato that you can get from the Shulk Amiibo, you can unlock these somehow in a future patch. It's probably just going to be beating the game again. Next up, Noah and Mio are getting Amiibos? I don't know why. Mio is already getting 2 Good Smile figures. I don't think she needs more. I don't know what these would be used for. Like, can you tap the Noah Amiibo to give Shulk Noah's sword instead of the other way around in Xenoblade Definitive Edition? It's gonna be neat to have them. I just don't know what they would be used for. That's all the information we're getting on that, by the way. No release date, no additional details. We are also getting a little bit more information about soundtracks, as there's a bunch of stuff that can be pre-ordered through the end of April. The first of which is the Xenoblade 3 original soundtrack, which will be released in Japan on Saturday, July 29th. So, yeah, end of July. Gonna be another good time for Xenoblade. Not as good as next week, but it's a pretty good one. And you can also buy a special edition that comes with an 80-page booklet and 1/3 scale replicas of Noah and Mio's flutes. There's also another version of the Definitive Edition soundtrack, including the Future Connected songs, which will release on Wednesday, August 2nd. And also releasing on July 29th is the Xenoblade Original Soundtrack Trinity box, which contains collections from all 3 games. The only issue with this is you cannot get the materials from the special edition of the 3 soundtrack with the Trinity box. You will need to buy both of them to get everything. So please like, comment, subscribe so I can do that, because I kind of want to do that. Oh, and they do ship internationally, and you can set the store to work with like 100 different currencies, so you can probably get your hands on it without a proxy shipping service, regardless of where in the world you live. So that's legitimately neat, although I think you can only make the website itself work in Japanese and English. Pre-orders will close on the 30th, and by that I mean it's probably the end of April 30th Japan time, so you and me both should probably get on putting your pre-orders in. Although I might need to wait to see how the ad revenue from the first couple days of this video works to make sure I can do both and not just one of them. Please subscribe. How many times do I have to say that? Just do it. Anyway, now we're going to go back to the top of the page where it actually starts talking about Future Redeemed, and we're just going to machine translate stuff all the way down. There are fan translations coming out, but I need to get this done as quickly as possible, or it literally will not be out by the time the game is. The first thing is a story blurb, and this is kind of interesting because it takes the form of the story blurb from the base game. As it says, Keves and Agnes, the 2 hostile forces, or engage in a never-ending battle. The Keva soldier Nikal and the Agnes soldier Glimmer confront each other on a certain battlefield. In the midst of the two fighting for their lives, a young man cuts in. You're not the real enemy. A young man from the city, Matthew, who intervenes, tells the two that they are not enemies of each other and reveals the existence of their true enemy, Mobius. Those who realize the truth of the world will challenge the battle against its fate. So yeah, this isn't framed anything around Matthew taking revenge against N or the founding of the Second City or anything about Nael. This blurb is around Glimmer and Nikal, so all the stuff I said about the story structure, about starting with a prologue with Matthew and something, that might be wrong. We could cold open with the whole Glimmer-Nikal fight, then get introduced to like Matthew, Shulk, Rex, and A, and then get flashbacks to what all of the other characters were doing, and we view our introductions to this version of Ionios through the eyes of recently freed soldiers of Keves and Agnes, just like we did through the main game. This is obviously also drawing an intentional, massive parallel to the whole Guernica situation, except this time, instead of dying immediately, Matthew appears to still be the main character of Future Redeemed. Next up, blurbs on a bunch of characters. We also have images for the 6 playable characters that also list their weapon type and their class. First up is Matthew. His class is Martial Artist, which again makes sense. He's the founder of House Van Damme, and we see both Guernica and Gondor use similar martial arts to his. His weapon type is Ouroboros Knuckles. So yeah, remember that thing I said about how his fists might have the Ouroboros stone thing because it made a similar energy? That might very well be the case. At some point, he probably unlocked Ouroboros energy in himself and maybe Nael, and then was somehow able to either let that out of his fists or got the little central bit of it that's a piece of origin metal embedded in his gauntlet somehow, and that's how he's going to unlock the Ouroboros power in, at the very least, Glimmer and Nikal, possibly Reed and Cassini if we ever meet them. His bio reads, a young man who belongs to the organization City that opposes Mobius. He fights with fists imbued with special powers. He has a straightforward and caring personality and is looking for his missing sister, Nael. I don't think much of this comes as a surprise. This is about what we'd expect from a character like him. Next up is A. Her class is Monado Fencer, and her weapon type is literally just Monado, so yeah, they're really not hiding anything with this. She is a user of a thin red sword and works together with Matthew. She has the personality to judge things calmly and is a good partner of Matthew who tends to act without thinking about the consequences. So yeah, basically a similar relationship Shulk had to Alvis, except she's actually working with Matthew on a more long-term basis, and who knows? I don't really know how real her personality is, because the thing about Alvis is he is the original Ontos personality. Numa, and by that I mean Pyramithra, and then Malos were personalities awakened as blades, so they were not the original AI personalities developed for the Trinity processors, so we don't really know what A's relationship to Alvis is. Is she a continuation of the same consciousness as Alvis? Is she a split off like a Pyramithra thing? Is she somehow reawakened as a blade version of the Ontos core because something bad happened to Alvis when the whole Shulk Rex Zed thing happened? We don't really know yet, but the way she interacts with or relates to Alvis is probably going to be a very big deal and probably something you're going to need to hide behind spoiler barriers in future videos. Nikal is next. His class is Machinist, insert funny reference here, and his weapon type is Variable Backpack, which I think is a kind of twofold reference. The first is that Poppy Cutie Pie's weapon type in Xenoblade 2 is Variable Saber, and this backpack has mock-up Napon arms on it, so again, he's close to Napon. He will probably end up being Riku's Master Pawn, even though I actually initially thought it was Shulk, and will probably have a big role in developing like some Lucky 7 related thing, because we know Napon are tied to Lucky 7. The second reference is he's got a little ether cylinder thing on the bottom of the backpack that is virtually identical except in color to the one Valdi wears, so it seems like Valdi's gauntlet technology is somehow descended from Nikal's, which is kind of interesting. I guess he was so talented that even though he became Ouroboros and betrayed Keves, some technological descendants of his work still carried down in Keves military technology just because it was that good. His bio reads, a soldier of Keves who is good at mechanical engineering. He has a calm and quiet personality, but when it comes to talking about machines, he shows a positive side. He doesn't fight with blades, but with his self-made machine arms. Again, worth noting, that it looks like everyone else uses a traditional Ionian blade weapon, like including Shulk and Rex. Kind of interesting. And Nikal is the only exception because he wanted to make his funny Napon arms. Glimmer's class is something with a lot of kanji, so it doesn't machine translate very well. It was either firefighter or flamethrower is what I'm getting, but it's probably something like fire staff, fire adept, something along those lines. And her weapon type also does not machine translate very well. It's something Kane. We'll find it out soon enough. I don't think the name of her weapon type particularly matters, largely because it doesn't have anything Aegis related in it. Her bio reads, a soldier of Agnes who fights with a cane strung with strings. She has a stubborn personality, and sometimes her tone becomes harsh. Unable to accept the truth of the world, she acts selfishly. So yeah, even though she is pretty clearly Rex's kid with Pyra, she has a more Mithra-like personality. And while I think it would be funny to continue the tradition of roasting Mithra in DLC and have her and her kid never mentioned, it seems likely then that Mithra's kid is more like Pyra, which I think would be a neat dichotomy to see if we ever actually get to see the full family together. Shulk's class is Grand Soldier. It's fitting because he's very Dunban inspired, and Dunban has like the general set, so he's clearly a big and important soldier guy, as if we didn't already know that. So I think that's pretty cool. The pose in his art is also a reference to a piece of art of Dunban from Xenoblade 1, so that's always nice and cool to see. And his weapon is Monado Replica EX Kai. Off the top of my head, I don't actually know what the Japanese name of the Monado Replica EX Plus from Future Connected is, so it could very well be that. He's described as a kind-hearted swordsman who wields a red sword. From his past battles, his right arm becomes his prosthetic arm, and he wields a large sword with only his left hand. To help Glimmer, who is attacked by Mobius. Yeah, that's basically the Reed statue description. Don't really have much else to say here, other than this man is tired. Lastly, for party members is Rex, with the class Master Driver, you love to see it, and the weapon type Flaming Twin Swords. That's probably a slight mistranslation, as obviously only the Pyro one is supposed to be on fire. He is described as a large swordsman who wields 2 pairs of swords. He has lost his left eye in a past battle. He has a lively and frank personality, and together with Shulk, he leads an organization called the Liberators. So yeah, the faction operating out of Colony 9 is not necessarily the same faction that becomes the Lost Numbers and is from the first city. It seems like whoever's left of the Liberators after the end of this story is going to get rounded up by Matthew and go to the second city and work together with the other founders, but that's an entire different story. It seems like the Liberators are at least initially a separate faction, and the Lost Numbers might not even exist at this point in time. Next, Niall, Matthew's younger sister. She has a kind personality, taking care of the children in the city. Due to a certain incident, she goes missing. Her art really makes her look like she can open up portals of some sort, or use the same rift energy from the Future Connected fog rifts or something like that. So she might have somehow just been born with Zohar power or something, and that's why weird stuff's happening around her, and like how Ontos can take control of her or something like that. I don't know. If her art didn't have those yellow effects, I don't think I would be thinking so hard right now. And I almost wish I lived in that universe because my brain is very sore. Lastly though is a mystery character, described as a mysterious person who appeared before Shulk and Rex. Shulk looks like a familiar face. I mean, this could be a fake Alvis, but it's obviously Alvis. I don't know why they're doing that. When they first revealed the members of Mobius, I don't think they outright used the term, and they listed like D and N as question mark on the website or whatever, and like, that's fine. They're mysterious characters from some evil faction that's probably the real enemy Guernica talked about. But then, like, this is just Alvis. He looks like a character from a previous game, and looking like Noah is one thing. Alvis just being Alvis is something different. I don't know why they bothered, but I'm glad they did, because it's making me laugh. Lastly, for this page, we get a funny relationship chart, and thankfully this one's a lot smaller than the base game one. It straight up lists Gondor being there and being the grandfather of Matthew and Niall, so like that's a thing. And then it lists A as being basically in her complete unique faction, and a lot of the interpersonal relationships are just how they've been described before. Like, apparently Nikal and Glimmer used to be rivals of some sort, and they sort of had like an Ethel Kamaravi relationship, which is why they teamed up and were able to fight together really well, like as soon as they learned the truth of the world. N is shown in official art without his mask for some reason, so I guess he doesn't even get it until the end of the DLC. And then, very funnily, Riku is just listed alongside the Liberators, not connected to anyone. He's just there, which is perfect, because that sure is how Riku works. And yeah, we can't even move to the official site yet, because when the Japanese Xenoblade Twitter account tweeted all of these same little character bios, they also released small clips for every character, so we need to talk about those. Matthew's is just an extension of a trailer clip, as it's the one of Nicole and Glimmer fighting, and Matthew coming in and punching the ground. In this clip, we can in fact see that his fists do just have Ouroboros stone property somehow, as not only does the same green light come out, but it also astral projects the two soldiers, just like Guernica did when he activated the Ouroboros stone. A's clip is a bit longer and appears to primarily be highlighting her relationship with Matthew. This is all unsubtitled Japanese, so I don't really know much of what's going on, but we do first off see Matthew glow green and punch out and destroy what appears to be one of the Mobiusified spectral arachno enemies that you see inside Origin in the main game. Its design is a bit different, but it's clearly the same base model and stuff. And then they have a discussion that appears to be A, chastising Matthew for his more goofier and happy-go-lucky attitude, and I hear Matthew use the term Ouroboros power, so I think Matthew might have been the one to coin the term Ouroboros to begin with, which is kind of neat. And A does mention Mobius at some point, but it really just seems like they're talking about his power and how he needs to take things more seriously. And I just think it's funny, just on the Xeno protagonist trauma scale, despite the fact that at the very beginning of the trailer we clearly see something awful happen to Matthew, by comparison to the original Faye, he's still the goofy happy-go-lucky version of the character, which, man, when do we get a Xenogears port? Nicole's clip is him running away from battle. He uses his arms to hop over a little bit of machinery beast rubble, so that's probably something he'll be able to do in combat. When he climbs, the arms will probably do the climbing for him. And it looks like he's just very scared and not necessarily a good fighter, but once he learns about Mobius, he's more motivated and stuff. And the other Kavesi soldiers seem like they're looking around or something. I can't exactly tell what they're saying, but I think I hear one of them say Nicole-sama, so it seems like he might be the commander of his colony, and in somewhat similar, again, to Evaldi's situation, some of the other people need to pick up the slack, and there's basically a field commander that's doing all the actual commanding in the battlefield because Nicole is unable to really face that stuff. Glimmers basically follows up on this as a couple Agnian soldiers walk up to her, they spot Nicole hiding and say something about him. I can clearly hear one of the soldiers talking about how, his weapon isn't even a blade, and because I can't speak Japanese, I don't really know what Glimmer is saying here or what her response to that is, but my guess would be it's either laughing at him for being a wimp or something, or telling the other guys who might be her subordinates she's probably also a commander, because every important character besides the main party in Base 3 is a commander. That they still need to take him seriously because, that's the great Nicole of colony number whatever, or hey, he could still be a threat, we don't know, he could be faking this, or something like that. Shulk's clip is from the scene with the two Veronuses that we saw before, and it's of him pushing Glimmer out of the way of a big laser blast, saying something to her, and then confronting the console on top of it. He has not transformed into Mobius, he's still in his console armor, but unfortunately the shot is too far zoomed out. I can't tell if it's a reused armor design from the base game, or if it's a new design, or something like that. It's very, very possible that we'll meet consoles with similar letters to ones we've seen before, and they're just gonna die and get replaced at some point down the line. There's 1,000 years in between this and the main game, so it's not like they can't just do that. There's only a small handful of consoles who we actually need to see survive through all of this, so that's completely doable. Or maybe they just don't kill a lot of Mobius, because obviously they can't kill N permanently, so we don't really know what's there. Probably the biggest deal here is Shulk draws his weapon, and he can draw the Monado Rex like an Ionios blade, so my guess would be Rex's swords are also converted that way. And my favorite part about that, though, is he has muscle memory, so he still draws it like it's hung on his back, like it would have been normally. He just does that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's part of the iris, so characters can just choose to manifest their blades with a thought without needing to do any specific motion or anything, but because he trained on using a regular physical weapon, he still does that. And obviously the only difference is it's pointing the opposite direction because he can't use his right arm. It looks like the prosthetic is not very articulate, So he does still have to use his left arm to fight. Maybe just because of how biology and shonen power systems work, Shulk can only get stronger with his left arm. His right arm can only be as strong as technology or something. There's a big philosophical thing in that. I don't know. It's Shulk being cool again. I don't think there's a lot to complain about here. The Rex clip is just an extended version of the shot from the trailer where he quotes the two memes. We could see a little bit more that this whole thing where he saves Nikal and Glimmer is from after the part where the one Mobius fuses the two Ferranuses together, and that Matthew tries to also help, but he's too far away. And in a couple shots, we can also see Shulk protecting the same Charlotte lookalike Spear Girl. So Shulk's with her really frequently, so I'm really starting to think that this woman is going to be the founder of House Reed and just won't be playable because she's weaker or doesn't have Ouroboros powers yet or something. Niall gets a clip as well, and it's of her getting along well with kids like we kind of knew about from her little bio. This appears to be either outside the old city or just some little outpost thing, because the building behind everyone looks sort of like a city building thing, even from the second city. And then Matthew and Old Man Gondor also appear to be there and having a conversation, and we can see Gondor's outfit a little more, and it looks like he wears a green version of basically the exact same pants the modern Gondor uses and gives to everyone who adopts her class. Alvis's clip is kind of nuts, because it is an extended version of the trailer scene with some parts swapped out, and it shows that in the bit we were shown before in the initial trailer, they hid Zed very well, because he is there in the scene from the original trailer just off screen. And in fact, we can now see in complete context that Shulk and Rex say the exact same lines, with the addition of Shulk saying Alvis's name and Rex saying Shulk's. So yes, Rex's heartless machine line was in fact directed towards this Alvis, who is attacking him, Shulk, and Zed for some reason. Genuine evil Alvis is back on the table. At the very least, I think Rex believes that the Alvis Shulk knew cannot hear his pleas anymore. And that's terrifying, because that means something was able to overcome the full might of Ontos. And now we can move on to the official Japanese site for this, because while it repeats a lot of information, it gives us a whole lot more. Yay! It does repeat the same story blurb and character bios, but each character also gets 2 additional screenshots. Some of them are just straight up higher resolution clips of scenes that show up in the trailer, and some aren't, but there are, I think, 3 that are actually worth talking about. The first is Rex's second one, that shows him fighting using the combined version of his sword, and he has some red stuff splotching out of him. Like, is that blood? Is the whole difference that people from outside Ionios bleed normally, and people who were either born in Ionios knew, like, lost numbers, or are tied to the flame clock, or are born with the flame clock, don't bleed the same way or something, but then Old Man Gondor bled normally? I don't know. I can't tell if this is him cutting through something, this is him getting cut by something, or if it's just some energy around him. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. This appears to be the double Ferranus fight, and he's already missing his eye, so he really can't get particularly maimed in this specific altercation, but I don't know, maybe because he saved Glimmer, then she's gonna heal him up, or something like that. Or it's just regular red energy and I'm making stuff up. In A's second picture, we can get a very good look at her weapon, and yep, that sure is another version of Ontos' Monado, because it even has the kanji for Buster on it in the arts ring. Kind of interesting, I guess, because she doesn't seem to even have Monado Buster on her arts palette, but maybe she just uses Monado arts in cutscenes or something, or she unlocks them throughout the story like Shulk did in 1, and because she's just quirky like that, she has to learn Buster at some point, maybe from Shulk, instead of Shulk, who just inherited it from Dunban, who, I don't know how he knew it. I think he just thought, make sword big, make swing big, do more hurt, and I guess he was right. Nael's second image shows her using the same weird wormhole portal energy things from her official art, and interestingly, this appears to be in the same area by Ragwell Bridge, where the shot of her with the Ontos core and console outfit was taken. So I'm kind of thinking, especially because there's some red motes in the air, this is the instance of her transforming into that form and potentially becoming an antagonist who they have to, like, eventually get the original Niall out of this weird Ontos thing after N is defeated. So we do the whole founder story of them defeating N, but that's not the end of these characters' journey. It's just what was taken down in history, and they have to resolve the final issue of Ontos and properly set the stage for Noah and Mio's journey. Thankfully for your ears and my voice, we're almost done, but there are a couple subheaders in the official website that weren't anywhere else, a battle and a system tab. The battle tab reads, as with the main story of Xenoblade 3, battles where the roles of attacker, defender, and healer, which will differ for each character, are important. Fight by making full use of powerful techniques, arts with various effects. In addition, you can advance the battle more advantageously with special powers and cooperative attacks with friends. Then the first point is Ouroboros power. The main characters can use Ouroboros power, which is stronger than normal arts. Ouroboros power can be fused with other arts to obtain various additional effects. The effects obtained will vary depending on the combination of Ouroboros power and arts. Basically, what I can glean from this is, instead of having master arts from other classes, you can just gain Ouroboros power as your left side arts palette arts, and they're just additional, potentially more powerful arts, and fusion arts are slightly ridiculous in this expansion. In the first piece of the clip, Matthew's fusion art on Y/D-pad right is Mighty Force, which has Pierce, extra damage on aquatic, a front positional, and knockback. So yeah, I'm guessing the Ouroboros power arts are going to be way harder to charge up than master arts were in base game 3. The party is level 65, so I'm guessing the story at least goes that high, and the unique monster they're fighting has a side positional weak icon above it. So it's possible that's going to be a new feature enemies have, where in addition to positionals gaining additional effects on arts, enemies will also take more damage from certain directions. The next clip has the player controlling A and fighting a fog beast. We can also see that, yeah, the Fangs indicator did not denote a fog beast, as this, next to the level 37, has a new enemy type indicator that looks like one of the rifts. So fog beasts get their own special icon and their own enemy type, so it's possible that we will have gear, passives, or arts that deal more damage to them. The one art that she has here that she didn't in the clip in the other trailer is on D-pad up. It is Lost Ray, which is an AoE accuracy down. Also, Lost Ray and Cross Ray were the two arts Alvis had in the one fight where he's in your party in Xenoblade 1 that you could only see directly via UI if you used a chain attack, so I love these deep cuts. Please stop making my brain hurt. She then combines Ouroboros art Sky Foil, which inflicts attack down, and regular art Light Field, which is a regen field, and that creates Sky Field, which is just a combination of both of them. It seems like the very big art that Matthew used earlier was just a combination of arts that had a lot of different effects, and these are effectively normal fusion arts. Next shot, the player is controlling Nikal, and we can see two more Ouroboros arts he didn't have before. One is Smart Bomb, which is just an AoE, and then Machine Clap, which is defense up. And he fuses Machine Clap with something on the right side to create Machine Razor, which is, again, just a regular fusion art. I think you get the deal here. We're just seeing people use fusion arts. They function basically like regular fusion arts, although we do see him use a defensive ability that comes out of his Ouroboros stand, and bizarrely enough, we did see A use one, even though I don't think she's supposed to be an Ouroboros. It doesn't even look like Alvis, it just genuinely appears to be an Ouroboros, so maybe she will at least temporarily interlink with Matthew at some point, and then he meets Niall and then figure out how to do it regularly. But there's also a new shield effect that I think is unique to this specific ability, if not Ouroboros shields in general, and I think that's kind of neat. And then we see Glimmer use one. We do get small glimpses of everyone's Ouroboros forms, but they're ephemeral and often covered by UI, so I'm not really going to talk about it a lot. And yeah, at the end of the clip, we see Shulk use one, and then we even see Rex use one. So it looks like everyone here in the party has Ouroboros power, even though, as far as you know, A shouldn't, because Matthew's supposed to interlink with Niall, and Shulk and Rex are supposed to only be mentors for the founders, so somehow power is going to be passed around, I think. As for arts we haven't seen before, this is the only clip we've seen where Glimmer was being controlled by the player. On the left side, we have Meteor Fire, which inflicts ether defense down, Payment, which is just a heal, and Kanade no Kanade, which is an AoE crit up buff. Again, a lot of kanji, a lot of stuff that's not going to machine translate well. Her talent art is Rekagoken no Karane, which is area attack full recovery, so an AoE that heals on hit most likely. Then on the top, Cluster Amaryllis. which is physical defense down and burning heat, so I'm guessing that is Blaze. Then Large Wreath, which is AoE and heal party on hit. And then Flame Song, which is an attack upfield. So yeah, she has a lot more Signifer DNA compared to Medic Gunner, which I guess A is technically the Uni and Glimmer is technically the Fiona, because neither of them works like Tyon, I don't think. We also see 2 more Ouroboros arts from Shulk. Unsurprisingly, they're more Monado arts. The one on D-pad right is just Monado armor, which has now been turned into a field that grants armor to people standing in it. And the one on down is Monado Breaker, which is not a break art because he already has Stream Edge. Although Air Slash also did that, but he doesn't have that, so shut up. Anyway, Breaker is an AoE high aggro art. Rex's other arts return in his clip, as on D-pad right is Rolling Smash, which is now just an AoE. And on down is Sword Bash, which is resist down, so I'm guessing that is debuff resist down, which is very interesting. I don't know why they took positionals off of him, but I mean, I guess they gave Dual Blast a side positional, so sure. Interesting that Sword Bash, they're trying to make it more useful than Double Spinning Edge, I guess. Let's go with that. The second part of the battle header is a segment called Union Combo, the tag union of 2 characters. By cooperating with the Union, you can unleash a powerful combination attack Union Combo. Ability also improves when attacking with Union Combo. Depending on the combination of unions, the attacks and improved effects will also differ. This is what that Hellstream combination attack that we saw in the trailer was. Instead of interlinking, because the characters can't do that yet, you can pick and choose and assign the characters to any 3 pairs you want, and they'll each get combination attacks depending on your pair. I'm not about to go over machine translation of everything in the menus in this 55-second clip, but I will talk about all the stuff we see at the beginning, which is where we're choosing Nikal's partner. Because on the left side, we can see the kind of buff that will be granted to the party upon using it, and on the right, we can see what the actual union attack is. So for Matthew, the range of AoE arts is increased by 100%, and the damage done is increased by 200%, with the actual attack being damaging and bursting enemies within a certain range. With A, it is a 20% chance to invade enemy attacks, and the attack is just damage and smash. With Glimmer, the damage dealt increases as battle time progresses, so that's very powerful if it keeps going like that. And the attack is a single target burst with heavy damage. With Shulk, allies take 15% less damage, and HP recovery is increased by 15%. Effects do not stack. And it is a single target blowdown. And with Rex, damage dealt increases according to the number of buffs currently active, and it is an AoE blowdown. The player selects Glimmer, then also pairs Shulk and Rex, and it looks like they already paired Matthew and A, because it then cuts to a listing of all of the union combos currently available with this party selection. For Matthew and A, the passive effect is Chain of Power. Using different arts within a certain period of time increases the effective arts, that's just use unique arts. And the attack is Mega Crush, which is a big damage AoE blowdown. Then we already saw Hellstream in the trailer, which is an AoE burst around a target. And the passive effect for Nikal and Glimmer is Psyche Growth, or Rapid Growth. It keeps flipping between those two, so I'm guessing that that just is the translation of that kanji, which is, as we saw before, the damage dealt increases as battle time progresses. And then for Shulk and Rex, the passive is Invincible Myth, increases damage dealt by 100% when attacking an enemy with higher level. And the attack is Try Disaster, which is a damaging single target smash. The rest of the clip is just those attacks being executed. I think there are only a couple interesting things to see, especially because Hellstream was already used on a different enemy in the trailer. Like, yeah, there's some more Fog Beasts, and we can see that the Forced Burst from Hellstream affects it out of launch, which is a little nuts. But, I mean, you see A using what I think are a couple animations taken from Noah in chain attacks. And by the way, we never see a chain attack in the expansion in any of these clips. And then, lastly, in the whole Shulk Rex thing, we can actually see the Monado Buster kanji appear on his replica Monado, so I think that's kind of neat that he learned how to do that. I don't know if it will work for, like, other Monado arts he has access to, but it would be cool. I would love to see actual kanji for the other Monado arts, especially if they're, like, the same kanji as some of Noah's Lucky 7 arts are that aren't the same ones as Monado arts, because that would be pretty neat. We already know Noah's version of Monado Buster is Jin's Heavenly Disrupt, so, like, things could go super wild with other Monado arts Shulk has access to, or if Matthew or A or someone also gains access to Lucky 7, or if, like, main game Noah's Lucky 7 is A's Ontos sword somehow, because they bear some similarities, and if A uses Noah animations, it's very possible, honestly. I think I like that idea. Like, if I was wrong about there being multiple Lucky 7s, and they're like, oh, we need a weapon that can eventually take on N's weapon, we need another Lucky 7, so Nikal, Shulk, Riku, the other legendary Nappan swordsmiths, somehow gain access to a bit of Melia's ki, because we knew that went into the original one, and that's a big deal. And then the gift from Alvis that Shulk said Melia talked about is something to do with A, and all that power gets pumped into the physical form of A's Ontos sword, because, you know, Monado Buster and Monado Arts, and ability to draw power from Origin, and that gets turned into the other Lucky 7 and given to Riku to hold on for safekeeping. And somehow, like, maybe A gets a vision about Noah and Mio, and they know that that's what they need to do to properly save the world or something. I think I might be getting places with that. Anyway, there's one last subsection that talks about different systems. The first is affinity goals. In Future Redeemed, you can acquire Kazuna points. Kazuna is, I believe, what is consistently translated as affinity, so it's probably going to be called affinity points, through various experiences such as exploring fields, meeting people, and defeating enemies. You can use these points to grow your character. And then we get a few menu screenshots. The first one says Bond Ability in the upper left-hand corner, and the player has 518 Bond points. 66% completed is Exploration. So it looks like that there are 6 different ways you can get these points. First one is Exploration, so that's probably just uncovering maps. The second one is Crossed Swords, so that's probably specific skirmishes or maybe battle-related quests. The third one is Mountains, so that's probably finding secret areas. The fourth one looks sort of like an affinity chart, so I'm guessing that's side quests and talking to people. And then the fifth and sixth are pretty obviously just enemies and collectibles, because those are pretty universally used symbols in the main game. The second one has the player discovering a location, and we can see the same compass thing that was on the location tab in the other window, so it looks like that's what that is. The name of the location is Valvis Hisen, or Parvis Hisen. Get only 4 experience, but it also says 2 out of 8 locations discovered. Kind of interesting, because the other image had location discovery at 66%, and you can't get 2/3 with a whole number out of 8, so that might be 8 locations in one specific region, and you do gain access to multiple regions, because there's the new area, which includes Prison Island and the new Snow region. Then there's probably a bit of Cadencia, because it does appear based on some cutscenes and triangulating relative to the sword and other areas you can see that this is going to be north of Cadencia, sort of where I predicted it to be, like in between the top bit of Cadencia and Capricorn. And then there's probably going to be multiple new areas, so I'm guessing the 2 out of 8 is just locations on that specific map, and the 66% is locations overall. Unfortunately, the image is incredibly blurry, so while I can tell that the location part of the indicator under the minimap just says they're at the place they just discovered, I cannot tell what the actual region they are is. So it looks just visually like this is a relatively new area. This doesn't appear to be the area outside of Colony 9. This obviously isn't the snow area, so it looks like this whole red autumny place, again, it also doesn't look like the Ragwell area, is going to be another new region, and I'm not sure what game this draws from because it's fairly generic looking, except for the fact that the foliage is all autumny, which we never really see in the other games. The last image of this set is of Matthew's upgrade screen, and we can see that the player is now up to 2,238 bond points. So either things scale really weirdly because almost everything in the first image was over 50%, or the number there is just the amount remaining, not the amount you've accumulated in total, and that number just does go down as you spend stuff. Anyway, we can see what looks a little bit like a slightly more open-ended version of the Ouroboros skill tree, and Matthew currently has 16 out of 25 things unlocked, so that's the entire 10 on top, then the next row of what looks like art enhancements or passives below that, and then one thing with the same icon on the third row, and then there's another set of 15 below this set of 15 that's currently locked, and I'm not sure how you'd release that. My guess it's a story lock, but there is a Y icon there, so it looks like you could just spend a big lump sum to unlock it immediately, though I'm guessing that at the very least the second set is story gated, and then you can spend more after doing a bunch of stuff to get the third set. What is being highlighted right now, though, is talent art enhancement for only 40 points, which seems like a steal considering the fact that they have 2200. And amazingly, unlike the base game, it actually tells you exact numerical enhancements of how stuff works, because the damage ratio, or whatever they call it in this game, I barely even remember, goes from 750 to 870%, although the roll action charge is still just 3. And then it also has the reaction of when the talent art hits, recast of all arts recovers by 75%. That's a lot like base game martial artists, so it looks like Matthew is going to play a lot like Gondor did, or like Gondor would have if she was expanded to a full character. Also, the prompt by the minus button is very nice, because that's a reset. So it looks like, if you don't have enough points to fully unlock everything, you can reset your progress and alter your spec loadout to affect and do different things if you don't like the build you went with. This looks like, at least until you unlock everything, it's going to be the primary amount of character customization in this, because I can't see you being able to do a lot of accessory and gem and gear related stuff. A lot of that will probably be outright removed, and obviously it doesn't look like you're going to gain full access to the class system. We then get one last set of explanations for 3 different types of menus. The first is the Enemypedia. Once defeated, the monster is registered in the Monster Encyclopedia Enemypedia. You can earn bond points by defeating a certain amount of monsters. So it looks like just basically kill a certain amount of unique monsters in an area, gain bond points for that area. And it even looks like it tells you whether or not it has drops of certain rarities, and basically it's a bestiary. It doesn't look like it has outright little bios for different enemies like the one in X did, but it does look like it's going to be a bit better at actually telling you where stuff could be found, because in X it was basically just like, you can find it on this continent. This is a massive open world game. There are 5 continents. We can narrow it down in 5. Good luck with the rest of it. But in this case, it looks like it is spread a little bit more granularly. And in this area of the map, we can see what appears to be an, I want to say Kavesi colony, could be Agnian, but it looks like the big Zord type Kavesi ones that we see a lot in Ruins. And I think it was explicitly stated that that was an old model, so we'll probably see a lot of those around in this expansion if we see a bunch of different stuff. So that's neat. This looks like a completely new area that we haven't been to before, so this might be some sort of colony or something. Then next up, Collectopedia. Items obtained in the field are registered in the item picture book Collectopedia. You can earn bond points by collecting a certain number of each item. So it looks like they kind of combined the Collectopedia cards with the OG Collectopedia from the original game, so it's a little interesting. Also, it looks like the area in the Enipedia tab is called Red Forest, so that's probably the Automy area. I have no idea where that's taken from, because it's very clearly not a combination of names from other games. In the Collectopedia tab, the area being examined is the Amenesser Plateau. That might be a portmanteau of Japanese names of areas, or it could be just something completely made up, so it looks like we're getting a couple new areas, which is pretty neat. We could see 2 quest icons and 2 landmarks here, and there's also a camp icon in the enemy tab image. But yeah, it does look like we need multiples of every single collectible to fill out a square in the Collectopedia, which makes it sort of like the Collectopedia cards, but I also do like the story and gameplay integration, because it wasn't Alexandria who invented Collectopedia cards. It was the specific Alexandria alive during the main game, so they wouldn't be around. This looks like it's a function of the Liberators that they're doing to like properly catalog Ionios and stuff like that, which would make sense because Shulk has knowledge of Collectopedias, and it's not stuff diluted between Kavesi and Agnians like the other stuff was, so that's pretty cool. What might not be pretty cool though is the third tab, because that is replacing the affinity chart, and it is the community that looks basically like the community from Torna. During the adventure, if you interact with people living in this world, you might be consulted about trouble. You can also earn bond points by solving people's problems and deepening bonds. So, this is basically the affinity chart again. However, it seems like this is going to basically be a way of getting bond points, and it doesn't look like it will be story gated unless you need to make a certain amount of bond points in order to do that. The NPCs listed here are Accelerator, Io, Karam, Kalmon, Kiri, Grey, who's almost certainly a Napon, Kobami, and Saomi. So, it looks like we could vaguely see which nation these characters are from. Like the more Japanese sounding ones are probably either from Agnes or Free People, because there is a Blade there. Riku is also there, and there is a Machina there. So we are seeing people from multiple races, so it does look like the Liberators are actually made up of multiple races, and it is just through interbreeding that everyone in the city is either just a regular human or a Nappan. There's also blue and gold rings. The gold rings look more embossed, so it looks like that's probably what happens when you've gotten all the bond points from someone. The character selected right now is a troublesome self-proclaimed adventurer, Saomi, who has an age listed as 18, so I'm guessing then that that means that this is a Liberator, which, yep, the faction is listed as Liberator. And main activity time, 6 to 22 hours. Challenge, check 1, advance the main story to chapter 3. Check 2, clear the quest Snow Treasure Hunt. Check 3, talk to someone. And check 4, change Heisen's Hitonoa. So, no idea what any of that stuff means, but it looks like you need to do certain tasks, not necessarily in certain orders, because chapter 3 is checked and the third thing is checked, but the side quest is not checked. And once you've completed all of them, you get the maximum amount of bond points from them. You probably unlock a separate special conversation with them, and then their ring probably turns gold. And my guess would be everyone who you've maxed out like that survives. And after the main story, Matthew goes on a journey to go find the people who've been scattered to the winds after Colony 9 was destroyed, probably in an annihilation event or something. And it's said that the founder Vandam left after defeating N and then came back decades later. So I'm guessing that Matthew goes out, finds all these people, and then brings them back to the city after however long has passed. And that's how the second city is founded, and we're probably going to end with, like, seeing the founder statues, if not a flash forward to the end of Ionios or something like that. So that's how I'm guessing that goes. And obviously, the gold circle, it looks like what I thought was going to be the affinity chart badge in the bond point collection screen. So yeah, once you get someone maxed out in the community, you get that stuff. And I don't know. I think I'm done talking here. I am very tired right now. I've recorded all of this the night the trailer dropped without going to bed, so I would like to go to bed. The only other thing I really have to say, because like it comes out in a week, I don't really feel like speculating a whole lot more because like it's coming out soon. I'll just be able to play it before I can form completely coherent thoughts, is if they want to reuse assets in a very, very smart way, Taion, Uni, Lanz, Senna, and every hero associated with Keves and Agnes can appear as an enemy, just as some random soldier. You could just reuse battle grunts and incidental dialogue from the main game without having to like get them to record new lines for certain things. And that would be extremely heartbreaking because it's previous versions of all that stuff. Will we see Uni's gold rank colony get destroyed? I don't know. More food for thought, more fuel for your nightmares. Until next time, this is Luxon signing off. Probably the next time you see me, I will be done with Future Redeemed, so that's gonna be fun. Later.